So, I want to talk to you like not a long time. 1 minute about kindness. That's it. 1 minute. He has this so he doesn't get lost. And I don't know why the dog keeps taking this off. You need this, buddy. We don't want you to get lost. So, I just want to say that I've been like watching things about evil because in America there's a lot of evil. Like if you look at America, there's so much crime and evil. Like there's no war, maybe like in America, but there's definitely a war in society when elderly people or especially children, which is very very disturbing for me. Why there's so much child abuse? Why there's so much uncaring? Why nobody sees what's going on in the other person's home? And I hope Israel will never be a society where people don't care about the neighbors, but I think it's slowly getting to that in urban, particular one urban area. We are dealing with so much evil around us that we forget to deal with the evil amongst us. I'm very disturbed by people that are calling for terrorist deals with terrorists, releasing terrorists, because these people are no different than people who go on and abuse elderly people in their home or children. They do that in the so-called name of religion, but that's BS as we know it. No religion in the world will justify abuse of non-violent living beings. Why would you harm animals or children or elderly or people in general who have done nothing to you? Or would somebody come to somebody in a shopping center and take a knife and stab them so hard that they will die from this? And in Israel, it's like, thank God it's not as common. Like, we have like terrorist violence, but in America, what I can see, it's sort of domestic terror when people treat children so badly because of abuse of drugs. And I don't think people do that because of drugs. I wanted to say that. I think the opposite. I think it's not that people harm others because of drugs, because I know also the terrorists on October 7th took drugs. I think people who take drugs are people that don't want to have moral values that guide them. They just don't, they shut the door to God. When you take drugs, you shut the door to God or whatever you believe the creative force in life of the universe is. People who take drugs, alcohol, they numb their systems so they don't have to take responsibility, but they are in fact responsible 100%. And I'm thinking how I grew up in a family where people were so numb to other people's pain, not just mine, but just animals. You know, this is the why I'm so involved with animals my entire life, is because this is the test. This is the test of human beings. If you treat helpless beings, cats, dogs, in an abusive way, you're an abusive person, period. And you will do that to any living being. I don't think human beings are necessarily more important than animals or animals more important. I have a very hard time with the death of any living being that is non-violent. But I wanted to say, I just feel I'm so different than the rest of my family. And a lot of time I thought I was hoping I was adopted. There was a joke my brother told me once that a gypsy left me on the doorstep, and genetic tests have proven that I am not adopted. I am from the ethnic origin, the family which I was born, unless everybody else is adopted. But nobody in my family has ever rescued an animal except me. Nobody in my family has ever been shown kindness to people, not involving financial transitions. I have siblings who have shown kindness to lonely elderly people just so they can get their hands on their inheritance and the money. And I think it's so sad because I'm just so disgusted to be part of such a family. I'm so disgusted that my siblings never showed kindness to our mother. As the only kindness they ever shown was manipulative kindness, trying to get their hands on the family money. And I think it's so sad for them especially. I really feel the more I'm involved with yoga and ancient Eastern philosophy and also Judaism, I feel that the very core of real religion and real spirituality is feeling compassion for those who lack compassion. It doesn't mean we excuse them, and it doesn't mean we forgive them. I don't believe it. I'm just not Christian, so I can't forgive. And, I think it's a valid path to forgive evil people, but I just don't have it in me. I don't believe in it. I believe that to always have compassion. And I'm so, so glad that I'm a person wondering how people behave in evil ways and lack of compassion, rather than a person that wonders why not everybody in the family, like why 100% of the family doesn't behave in psychopathic, lack of compassionate ways. As I said, the animals, this is the test. I don't know one person in my family who's ever adopted animals. I had a great uncle who used to drown kittens who were not purebred. I shudder at the thought that he actually gave me a Siamese cat that he bred. So I don't think that evil people are completely evil, but they're 99% evil, because people who don't show compassion towards living beings that are not violent towards them, I don't think you can repair that. I think it's a very deep damage in your soul. And I feel a lot of compassion towards me, mostly, that I had to live with such people. And I have to live, for all the people who have to live through living in a society where people don't have compassion. And I really am disturbed by people who go to demonstrations and using kidnapped people and say we should release terrorists. We should do everything possible. We should negotiate with terrorists, and it doesn't matter the price. It doesn't matter that these terrorists will go and murder helpless babies and children and elderly and people and enslave women and do the most horrific things to them. It doesn't matter to them, because people like that don't have any compassion, because if they did, they would realize how inhumane and how disgusting terrorism is, and they would never even consider releasing them. And they would think about the over 600 soldiers who give up their lives so we can live normal, well, whatever normal means, life is. And nobody talks about them as if they're not important, as if the only people that are important are people whose relatives had been kidnapped. I think it's the most horrible thing in the world to be kidnapped, and I think it's horrific that America and the world isn't enraged in doing something to put pressure on this terrorist to release the people held hostage. But I just don't think it's right. Two wrongs will never make a right, and releasing psychopaths into our society to do more harm, I just don't see how that can do any good. And I'm really saddened that America has so much psychopathology, and it's so typical of societies that have so much wealth and potential, and yet instead of flourishing and being societies that promote the good, they become societies that promote evil and terrorism, and the most intelligent and educated people are supporting terror. And there is a connection between the way you murder your next door neighbor, or even your own children, what you do to them in your own home, the abuse of children, elderly, helpless beings, animals, is so connected to the political climate in which terror is like, it's downplayed, is that the word? It's the way terror is like, oh, it's excused, it's not seen as the worst thing, because whether you terrorize your own children, other people's children, it's still terror, and there's no excuse for harming non-violent beings. And I'm just so happy that I don't live with these people anymore, and I'm just thinking how I survived all these years living in a family that showed no empathy towards animals. I remember having to guard the life of my childhood dog because my sister wanted to have him euthanized, and she euthanized her daughter's cats. And my brother, the way he didn't think twice about taking advantage of elderly people whose son was killed as a pilot just to gain money. I mean, I'm so lucky that I survived and that my soul hasn't been crushed completely. And also having been married to a person who didn't care about how I feel, didn't care about my emotions, objectified me and manipulated me to the utmost. And it's the same because when you grow up in a family that shows no empathy, you marry people like that because that's familiar. And I don't believe for a second that people who fall into abusive relationships don't have that model at home in some way or form. You don't have to have the same abuse, but you have been abused if you choose to be with an abusive person more than 1 second. The minute somebody abuses me and abuses you, sorry, and you're not out the door, even living in the street is better than living with a person who abuses you. That's not the options, by the way. But they're also very abusive societies, and some societies are more abusive than others. And any society that discounts abuse, that discounts violence against helpless beings, that thinks that abusing a cat or a dog or a child or an elderly person is not so bad because they don't have political power in society, is a pretty sick society. Any society that puts on trial people who defend helpless beings and kill terrorists is a very corrupt society. Any society that uses kidnap people and wants the release of the worst psychopaths that have ever roamed the face of this planet and excuse psychopathology is just what it is, sick. I just really hope for healing for Israel and for the rest of the world, and never, ever, ever to excuse harm towards any non-violent beings. Peace, light, and love.